to our meditation time, I invite you just to settle in on this longest day of light of the year, the summer solstice. And as you allow the body to settle in, allow the eyes to close. And there's still this hint of sun out on the horizon. And so let's just spend these few minutes that we have in our quiet meditation time, just kind of basking in this beauty that is nature. This light where the sun is, there's light from the moon for tomorrow's full moon. And here we sit right in the middle of the two. And so just get comfortable. Start to find some breath that feels good and nourishing. And as you've taken the chance to pause tonight, as you've made the investment to pause, I want us first just to recognize the reality in which we all live. You know, we don't show up to meditation just to escape the reality, because if we did that, we'd have to go back out there unprepared. And so I think it's important that we understand this reality of this busy life that we each live, of these distractions, of all these things that we juggle. And so I would just ask each of us just to pause for these first few breaths and just kind of check in and see, what does your daily living look like lately? What are the things that are filling up your time? What are the things that are filling up your thoughts? What are the things that maybe cause you some worry or some heartache? What are the things that make you smile, that you're anticipating and looking forward to? So again, just pausing in the reality that we all live, understanding all these parts that just play these roles in this beautiful life that we've each been given. Part of this practice allows us to cultivate a sense of gratitude. We know that it's not something that's just held to a date on a calendar, but it is something we want to foster within our lives every day. And so while we're pausing and we're checking in with the reality, just ask yourself in this moment, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? Because I think, and I have lived this life that believes this, that even in the midst of the reality and the tough, hard things that we must travel through, when we can bring in this spirit of gratitude, the reality looks a bit more hopeful, a bit more manageable, a bit less overwhelming. And so just ask yourself, what am I grateful for today? And as we have individually and collectively chosen to pause right now, with this, again, the sun hovering on the horizon here late at night and the moon taking its place in the sky, and we sit in the midst of all the light. I've thought a lot the last few days about a quote that I have used many times in teachings, in meditation, in my own personal journey. And it's just kept reverberating in my heart, in my head. It's a quote by Viktor Frankl. He's often quoted. He's this Holocaust survivor who gave us so many pieces of wisdom after he was rescued. So many lessons for this reality that each of us is living. And this quote that I often use from Viktor Frankl says, "In between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And in that pause is my power to choose. And in that choice is where my freedom lies." And so I want to just kind of break those words down and just see if they can give us first encouragement, but then also maybe a little prick of our spirit as we set intentions, as we make commitments to taking this practice off this cushion or wherever you are and let it really permeate into all the parts of life. And the first line is, in between stimulus and response, there's a pause. If I were to ask you to make a list today of all the stimuli that you've experienced, for some of us the list would be long. And then to kind of categorize those stimuli into the ones that were really great, that made you feel good, and the ones that didn't make you feel so good. But what Viktor Frankl says, and this is a man who survived the most atrocities of our recorded history, he says there's going to be stimulus coming in. And there's going to be a response because we are human. But his wisdom teaches us that in between those two, there is a pause. Maybe it's the pause that comes within the breath. Maybe it's the pause of that little switch that goes off in your head. Or maybe, like I said, it's that little prick of your heart and your spirit. But there is a pause. And then he encourages us and he says that in that pause is our power to choose. And what he's telling us is to choose our response. No one makes us respond a certain way, although we've all maybe accused people of that, or we've blamed that someone caused me to act a certain way, or you made me say that. But I trust in the words of this wise man that said, in that pause is my power to choose. And then I think the best part of the quote, in that choice is where my freedom lies. A man who was held captive, who was treated worse than any human has ever been treated. He was physically harmed, mentally traumatized. His spirit, they attempted to break it. But he said, when those stimuli came in, I knew I had a choice. Pause and then respond, or just respond. But his message is that he chose freedom. Because when we allow someone else's actions or words, when we allow them to push us seemingly into a response, we've just given them power over our choice. And if there's one thing that human beings want to have, is we want to feel this sense of a little bit of control. We want to feel like we have a little bit of freedom. So why would we knowingly give it away? I did an experiment today. I had to drive to a town a couple hours away where there's lots and lots of traffic. And I thought, I've been sitting with this Viktor Frankl quote all week as I've watched behaviors of people rise up when I wanted to act and to say and to do. But instead I just paused. I thought, I want to try this in traffic today. I want to drive as if no one else has control over how I drive. No one else has control over how I respond to how they drive. And it may sound like a silly example, but that's a part of all of our lives. And if we can practice this pause in something as simple and mundane as traffic, the more we practice it, it starts to permeate into the really important parts of life. Like when your spouse maybe says something and it causes your feelings to be hurt. Or when a boss doesn't acknowledge or seem to value what you're doing. Or when a friend doesn't live up to the expectations that maybe you have of them. If if we can practice how to respond in something as simple as traffic, we'll get better at pausing in all those other parts. And so I just determined this was how I was going to drive today. I turned on a podcast about mindful practices. I set my cruise control, my map, and I drove. I maintained the speed limit, and I drove. And there were many, many times when someone would come up behind me because they were in a hurry, and it was so obvious they were in a hurry. And I had choices. Speed up, break the speed limit, and satisfy whatever they were trying to do, or move over to another lane and let them pass me, or just keep doing what I was doing and let that represent my pause by not responding to someone else's impatience or unsafe driving. And it was really interesting because in the last years of driving, when those kind of things would happen, my heart would beat fast, I would grip the steering wheel, and sometimes I would do things on the road just to prove a point. Then I would get to my destination all tied up in knots with this anxiousness in my chest and this tightness in my jaw. No telling how I acted when I got there. But today, I chose to let the words of Viktor Frankl just sit with me and to just keep driving and breathing with my attention focused on my destination. Rather than focusing on the behavior of other people. Y'all, we all have a destination that we're working toward. This meditation practice is part of that. We're striving toward peace, toward wholeness in our lives, toward this union of this divine presence in our lives so that we can feel harmony in all that we do. So why do we let other people take away our freedom of working toward our destination? In between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And in that pause is my power to choose. And with that choice, that's where my freedom lives. So let's just sit together. Slow breaths in and out. And just see how this lesson that I learned on the highway today could maybe inform all the other parts of our life. Can we stay focused on this journey, this spiritual practice that we show up for on a Thursday night? This union and harmony that we work toward so many minutes of our day. Can we stay focused on that instead of allowing the behaviors of other people to distract us? They don't force us to respond. We make the choice. So maybe today we could decide, under this light of this moon and the sun right around us outside, maybe today's our first step of choosing something different. Just slow breath in and out, sitting with ourselves in stillness. Just continue to breathe. Notice what you feel as you sit in the quiet. Today I had a destination to get to. There were teachers waiting on one end for me to come and share with them, and I had to get there safely. And then on the other side, I had a husband and a home waiting for me, and they were expecting me to get there safely. I kept my focus on my destination, and I didn't let the behaviors of other people cause me to forget to pause before I respond. Maybe in the coming days, we'll think a little more about what is this destination for each of us. This practice doesn't have an end point, but it definitely has a direction. And once you determine what that is for yourself, and you keep your focus there, bad behavior choices will still come of the people around you. Things will still happen that have the possibility of hurting your feelings. You will still feel disappointed in the actions of others. But your power lies in that pause where you get to choose. I keep my focus on this journey, or I turn my focus to the behavior. Viktor Frankl would encourage us to pause, to claim our power to choose, and to keep on living. Namaste.